I can't believe it. If you're here, that means you injured your lumbricals.
Sad, sad.
But there's hope, my friends, because in this video, we'll show you how to solve that. By the way, if you love visual guides, be sure to check out a simple chart I made that helps make this entire process feel so much easier to follow and understand. Also, if you haven't already, definitely check out our video on everything you need to know about the lumbricals. This will absolutely help you on your recovery journey, as you'll be able to understand the anatomy and function of the lumbricals and why they get injured in the first place. That video will also help you determine the severity of your injury, which is important to know before starting rehab. Rehab activities and timing for a lumbrical issue will depend on the severity, and if you suspect a high-grade tear, you need to see an orthopedic or hand specialist. If, on the other hand, you're just suffering from a mild strain, like a grade 1 through 3, you will follow a standard protocol of range of motion, stretching, tissue mobilization, and finally retraining. To do the active range of motion tendon mobility work as mentioned, pick 3 rows on your palm. Number 1 near the knuckle, 2 near the middle of the palm, and 3 near the base of the palm. Lightly touch the pads of your fingers to each row while opening and fully extending your fingers all the way between every repetition. You'll also want to focus on creating the L position with your hand, as this will lightly activate the lumbricals. If you have just a grade 1 or 2 strain, I recommend starting range of motion right away. If you have a grade 3 or significant strain, you may still be able to start this active range of motion as early as a day or 2 after the injury, but start out gentler. The more severe the discomfort, the smaller and lighter your motion should be. If you do start this early, you will speed up the healing process. This section is quite simple. Doing some self-tissue mobilization or massage is always going to be helpful for any grade of a strain, and will even help in the remodeling phases of a tear. Any spare time you have, you may as well do some light tissue mobility work. Try to inversely match the intensity of the tissue work with the amount of discomfort, meaning if it hurts really hard to push on it, only push lightly so you don't create that pain. If it doesn't hurt at all, give it some more pressure to help stimulate the tissue. Self-tissue mobilization can be done multiple times a day and will be beneficial with even a few minutes of work. I recommend maybe 3 to 5 minutes if possible, maxing out at 12 minutes. For all injuries, grade 1 through 3 strains, you can start doing tissue mobilization within a day or 2 after injury, or once any swelling dissipates. The third step is to stretch the tissue. But because of the unique structure of the lumbricals and the likely cause of the injury being due to an awkward stretch of the tissue, we need to be more conservative with our stretching. We will have 2 forms of stretching as a result. One is designed to generally stretch all the lumbricals as one unit, while the other is designed to specifically mobilize the affected tissue. Passive range of motion general lumbrical/intrinsic stretch. To perform the first stretch, you will need to place the fingertips or fingernails of the affected hand on the base of the palm of your opposite hand. Your MCP will be neutral or slightly extended, while your PIP and DIP will be flexed. The goal here is to continue to extend the MCP joint while flexing the PIP and DIP. In the future, it is possible to isolate 1 or 2 fingers at a time for a more specific stretch, but in earlier stages of your healing, I recommend you focus on all 4 fingers at the same time. You should start with holds in varying lengths, starting with a 5-second hold, then maybe a 10-second, finally working up to 20 to 30 seconds long. Now for the more aggressive stretch, or what I'm calling the feather stretch. This second stretch is more aggressive as it recreates the position that likely caused your injury, so we'll perform that stretch only after the first stretch is pain-free. To do this stretch, you're going to keep the affected finger in extension and use your opposite hand to help move the adjacent fingers into flexion. Only move far enough to feel a gentle pull in the affected tissue. Hold this position for 3 to 5 seconds, then release. Repeat this a few times until it feels more comfortable, aka less than 1 to 2 out of 10 pain, and no fear or muscle guarding. Then go back to that position and hold it there with the other hand for 20 to 30 seconds. If you feel like an ache coming out afterwards that takes more than 30 seconds to dissipate, you may have stretched too far. If there's an ache that dissipates pretty quickly, that's fine, but try not to push more than that. If you have a grade 1 or a mild strain, I recommend the first passive stretch nearly immediately, as your range of motion should be near normal. The second more aggressive stretch can begin a few days after that. If you have a grade 2 or moderate strain, you may be able to start the first stretch within a week, but the second, the feather stretch, may need to wait a week or so after that before initiating. If you have a grade 3 or more significant strain, you may still be able to start that first stretch, say about after a week after injury, but you may need to wait an additional 2 or even maybe 3 weeks before beginning the more aggressive stretch. Alright, so you're feeling good, range of motion's improving, your fingers, your pain is down, you can poke at it all you want and it feels pretty solid. That means it's time to retrain the tissue. Retraining the lumbricals involves a few basic aspects. You need to work the finger flexors and extensors, you need to work the muscle itself, and you need to work it in a similar way that it got injured to really strengthen the tissue long term. Now pump the brakes. I'm not saying you should go back out to that 2-finger pocket dyno that got you injured in the first place. Not at all. Let's be clear and break these components down. So you're going to want to grab like a soft dowel, a Sharpie, or even a highlighter, anything like that for this next activity. You're going to squeeze the pen between the pads of your fingers and the base of your finger. As you try and extend at the MCP joint, maintain that pressure, trying to squeeze on lightly. If it doesn't cause pain, squeeze a little bit harder and try and extend a little bit more. This is a nice light exercise that activates the finger flexors with the extensors, which helps with the proprioception of the lumbricals, and it also lightly stretches them. Win-win. Win? Win. I recommend 2 sets of 10 repetitions and only perform it to an intensity that is comfortable. Once you have decreased pain, good range of motion, and can perform the aforementioned iron claw without pain, try some lightweight reverse curls. This causes finger flexion with light activation of the extensors, but also works like the wrist extensors, which can have an added benefit of reducing elbow issues when you return to climbing. Since this exercise is a little more aggressive, only perform it about 2 to 3 times a week. The frequency will depend on other activities, such as if you're still currently climbing, or what else is going on with your day-to-day activities. Now what else can we do that works the finger flexors and extensors? Climbing! Once you have reduced pain and good range of motion, go climb. Start casually climbing at least a few grades below your max and work your way back up. Avoid climbs with pockets or small holds initially, and you may also need to be careful with some slopers as this will activate the lumbricals a bit, so just make sure you aren't overdoing it and causing pain after climbing. So specific lumbrical strengthening will also have a large benefit in hastening your recovery so you can climb confidently faster. It can promote good blood flow and healing of the tissue, which will also allow you to pull harder again and with less pain. Lumbrical strengthening can be done concurrently with your aforementioned flexor and extensor training, but remember, the lumbricals don't have a huge contribution strength-wise, so don't get hyper-focused on this aspect. Level 1, isometric holds. One way to strengthen the lumbricals is an easy isometric activity. Place your hand in a pyramid-like shape on your desk, table, or any other surface really, like my hand. It will be making an obtuse L shape with only the wrist and the fingertips on the table. Push your fingertips down into the table and then imagine you're trying to pull the fingers in closer to you. The friction of the table and you pushing in should prevent this from actually happening, like you're not actually curling up, which will make it an isometric activity. If you're doing this very early in your rehab, hold for 30 seconds, rest for 30, and repeat 5 to 10 times. Perform 1 set 2 to 3 times a day. If you're doing this later in your rehab, hold for 5 seconds, building the intensity as you go, rest for a second, and then repeat 10 times. Perform 2 to 3 sets of that once or twice a day. If you're doing this really late in your rehab, stop. It's time to move on. Level 2, putty or foam Ls. The second level is going to be with resistance. Get yourself some foam, putty, or a dog toy, Squeeze it between your fingers and thumb as if pinching in an L shape. Foam is definitely preferred here over a dog toy, but you know, it works. If you're doing this very early in your rehab, hold for 30 seconds, rest for 30, and repeat 5 to 10 times. Perform one set 2 to 3 times per day. If you're doing this later in your rehab, hold for 5 seconds, building the intensity as you go, rest for a second, and repeat for 10 reps. Perform 2 to 3 sets once or twice a day. Level 3, farmer pinches. The third level is going to use our farmer crimps, but with a variation into pinching. You'll need a pinch block or anything that can get your hand into that L-shaped position. You want to make it progressively harder as you add weight. If performing moderately early in your rehab, perform 20-second holds with a 40-second rest, perform 6 to 10 reps, 1 set twice a day. If performing later in your rehab, hold 10 to 15 seconds with a 45 to 50-second rest, 6 to 10 reps, 1 set a day, 3 or 4 times a week depending on how it feels. Once you're feeling great and climbing well again, pinching stronger and not having pain, it's time for the final stage. It's time to meet your maker. It's time to become the master again. Time to face those pockets, stare deep into their empty hole where their soul should be but isn't because they're soul-stealing wretched monsters. Level 4, pocket retraining. So the final aspect of retraining is actually to work on pockets and retrain your tissue to face the load that originally hurt it. This will be the final piece in retraining the tissue to make it more resilient to a re-injury. My suggestion here is to start with farmer pockets, use the Ligamentous rock ring due to their inexpensive nature, or order a sweet Friction Labs block. Attach a bit of light weight and face the beast head on. As with other rehab tools, if this is newer to you, perform 30-second holds with 30-second rest, performing 6 to 10 repetitions, 1 set twice a day. If you feel super comfortable doing that, advance to 20-second holds, 40-second rest, 10 reps, 2 sets twice a day. If you're really ready to rehab, perform 10-second holds with 60 to 90 seconds of rest, 1 repetition, 6 total sets, and only do it once a day, 2 to 3 times a week. So, there's good and bad news. The good news is that with most lumbrical injuries, you can resume climbing quite quickly. In fact, if you only have a mild or maybe a moderate injury, then you can go back to climbing almost immediately. However, you should buddy tape to avoid flexing one finger and extending the other, and avoid pockets and strenuous slopers. If you're experiencing a more severe lumbrical injury, you can still resume climbing quite soon, but I recommend waiting until you have a good amount of range of motion with little to no pain. Alright, so that's the good. The bad is that this injury can linger for a while and can affect your performance. It can last 2 to 4 months depending on the severity, but if you don't do anything about it, it can last even longer and limit your max strength. Plus, you'll never want to touch pockets again, which disrupts your overall climbing. So be proactive. Do some rehab and get those muscles working well again so you can climb at your absolute best. And that's it. A few simple recommendations to help you climb better. Until next time, train those lumbricals so you have balance between your flexors and extensors. Climb those major projects with perfect harmony. Send it like the yoga master you are. Repeat. Oh no. Oh no. I don't know how to do it then. If you're here, I guess that means you injured your leg. It's like a little baby, you suck so bad. Oh, no. Passive range of motion, general lumbrical / intrinsic. I need water. Passive range of motion, general lumbrical / intrinsic stretch. Why am I not saying the R very strongly there? Intrinsic. Passive range of motion, general lumbrical / intrinsic stretch. Wow, intrinsic. Passive range of motion, general lumbrical / intrinsic stretch. But what if you're just watching this video and haven't actually done the weeks or months of rehab to get to that point, and you want to know what it'll take 2 weeks? Also, train pockets safely. I butchered that section.
Dude, say something cool so they like the videos and subscribe for more awesome content.
Like and subscribe for more super sweet vids, y'all.
So lame, dude. So lame.
I thought it was pretty good.